Hi, I'm John DeVore. This is an unboxing video. It's not a music review, not a Monkeyhaus, nothing like that. This is a unboxing video, and it is based on the fact that I'm extremely excited to unbox this pair of boxes. Inside this pair of boxes is a pair, I don't know if you can read it, a pair of Sugden amps, MPA, so they're the Master Class MPA4 monoblocks. Big, fat, juicy, mono, Class A, over 150 watts per channel in Class A. Why am I unboxing a pair of Sugden monoblocks? Great question. In a video a few years ago now, I did a survey of all the different amplifiers that I use in Monkeyhaus for pleasure, but more importantly, no, not more importantly, but quite specifically, in addition to for pleasure, I use them as design tools. So I use a variety of different amplifiers in the process of designing new model speakers, specifically so I don't end up designing a pair of speakers that is voiced for a particular style or styles of amplifiers. So for example, if I designed all of my speakers using amplifier A, and somebody used an amplifier other than amplifier A, there's a fair to good chance that they won't sound as good as the design played back using amplifier A. So my goal as a speaker designer is to make speakers that are not amplifier dependent as much as I can. Up until the Orangutan series, so the first Orangutan model was the O96. So up until the O96, which is more than a dozen years ago now, that wasn't that difficult. The Gibbon series and the Silverback speakers were all they were all designed to target a nice, flat, even 8 ohm impedance. They were fairly high sensitivity. They were and are fairly high sensitivity, but they're 8 ohms, which is a relatively conventional impedance for a pair of speakers. The big difference between that and the Orangutan series is that the Orangutan series is, all of them are above 8 ohms, and in many cases, significantly above 8 ohms. So the O96 comes in at around 12 ohms, but really is even higher impedance than that. It's sort of a 16 ohm speaker. The O93 is really sort of 10, 11 ohms. The O reference is a good solid 12 to 16 ohms. And what I started to notice is that not all amplifiers sounded as good into the high impedance as they did into the regular impedance 8 ohm speakers of the Gibbon series. And I also found this with speaker cables. And my working theory is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, is that most companies, most hi-fi cable companies, most amplifier designers don't have in their arsenal of speakers to listen to, they don't have a pair of high impedance speakers. They don't have a pair of Altec Valencias or, you know, something. Basically, you would have to have something either vintage or fringe to have a speaker with a load that is really above 8 ohms. You know, maybe like a vintage Rogers LS35A, one of the 16 ohm LS35As, possibly. You know, that is one of the standards out there. But my guess is that mostly they don't. I'm sure there are cable and amplifier designers that design on one pair of speakers, which in my opinion is really not a great approach for all of the reasons that I've sort of been talking about here. So what does that have to do with this pair of boxes that contain Sugden amplifiers? Well, one of the amps that I talked about in that survey of amplifiers here is my high power reference. So when I first started the company, my high power reference was a multi-channel Parasound amplifier. It was one of the John Curl designed ones. It was a 5-channel amp. And I got the 5-channel amp so that I could mess around with powering different parts of the same speaker and adjusting the volume controls independently. But I quickly realized that I really didn't need that. And so the high-powered solid-state amp that I had and that I talk about in that video, the amplifier survey video, is another Parasound design. It's the Halo A21. Big 2-channel, solid state, lots of current, and it sounded fantastic. So in my listening to different amplifiers over the years, I found that the Parasound A21 sounded just as excellent on the O96 as it did on a pair of the 9s. And so that was my long-term high-power solid-state reference for a number of years. So sometime after that video, I learned about a Parasound model that came out that was newer than the A21, but it was still a big stereo amp. So the A21 was Parasound's flagship stereo amp when I got it. When I learned about this other higher model stereo amplifier in the Halo range of Parasound, it was called the JC5. And the idea behind the JC5 was that it was essentially trying to be as close to a pair of the JC1 monoblocks in one chassis as possible. It has the JC in the name, which is the John Curl signature. So while the A21 was a John Curl design, for it to have the JC nomenclature implied to me that it was a significantly higher end model. And so I was very intrigued. So I checked with Parasound. I made sure that it was okay for me to sell my A21 amplifier, and at that point it was discontinued. It was the A21 Plus was the current amp. So they gave me permission to sell it. I sold my A21. I got a JC5 and let it burn in, and I had it for months and months and listened to it quite a bit, and I gradually came to the realization that the JC5, while it sounded fantastic on the 8-ohm speakers, it sounded fantastic on Gibbon Super 9s, it sounded fantastic on Gibbon 10s, it sounded a little bit lackluster driving the orangutans, driving the O96, and at this point I had the O reference set up. It seemed to have lost a fair percentage of its magic driving the high impedance speakers. So while driving a pair of Gibbon Super 9s, it sounded as good, possibly better. I didn't have them here at the same time, possibly better sounding than the A21. Driving a pair of O96 or O reference, it absolutely did not sound as good as the older model, the A21. And so I was pretty bummed out. So when Parasound was sold and the people that I know and knew and worked with at Parasound, they had all moved on, I decided that I should sell my JC5 and start over the search for a high power reference solid state amp. In the meantime, so that was a couple of years ago, in the meantime I had some homebrew Hypex amplifiers that I had built. So while I had been designing the amplifier section of the O reference bass machines, originally that was all supposed to be Class AB linear amplification, and then I realized that I wasn't going to have enough heatsink area to dissipate the kind of power that I was going to need for what I wanted the O reference performance envelope to be. So when I switched over to Class D switching amplifiers, I tried out a number of amplifiers from another number of companies, and the amplifier that ended up winning was a variant, was a sort of an OEM tweak of a Hypex model. And over the couple of years of prototyping and experimenting with these Hypex amplifiers, I accumulated a pile of Hypex Class D amps. And so I started to build little chassis and make full range amplifiers out of some of the modules. So I made a pair of monoblocks first. These are 400 watt monoblocks. There's a pair of these. And these are all built using scrap. So these are old binding posts and RCA plugs that I've had just in my DIY kit boxes. These are esoteric, pure unplated copper RCA plug, and a pair of those classy but soft Edison Price binding posts. So I built these, they sounded really good. They had a bit of that Class D vibe, but they were an excellent stand-in for having a high-power solid-state amp. And then I started fiddling around a little bit more, and I realized, one of the things that I realized when I was building the bass machines is that the Hypex amps, at least, actually the ICE amps as well, most of the Class D amps that I played around with responded best to lower impedance loads. So in the bass machines, I had prototyped bass machines with 8 ohm drivers and bass machines with 4 ohm drivers, and the 4 ohm drivers absolutely performed better with the Hypex amplifier modules built into them. So that got me thinking about ways to possibly optimize a Hypex amp for a higher impedance range speaker. So I ordered a couple of stereo amplifier modules from Hypex, and I rigged them in BTL mode, which is a bridged mode, so that you're using the stereo amplifier as one channel. So one of the channels of the stereo amp becomes the positive rail of the amplifier, and the other channel of the amplifier actually becomes the negative. So you run it balanced, and it becomes a balanced bridged amplifier, and you get a lot more power. You tend to get more than twice as much power out of it than you do if you used it as a 2-channel amplifier. But way more important for me is that the speaker load that the amplifier sees when it's running in bridged mode is half of the load that the speaker has. So for example, if I plug a bridged amplifier into a 16 ohm speaker, it sees that speaker load as 8 ohms. If I plug it into an 8 ohm speaker, it sees that load as 4 ohms. And that's sort of the reason why a lot of amplifiers, when you run them bridged, they will warn you that they are not rated into a 2 ohm load. Because if you try to drive a 2 ohm speaker, and there are some speakers out there that definitely drop down into 2 ohms, if you try to drive a 2 ohm speaker with a bridged amplifier, that poor amplifier is essentially driving a 1 ohm load, which is very close to a dead short. Not recommended. So I got a couple of these Hypex stereo modules, and I bridged them. And that's what I've been running most recently, and they are balanced input only. And they sound great. They sound more right. You know, they sound, in my opinion, they sound a little bit more right and a little bit less strained than a single channel unbridged Hypex module. Even though this is like a 400 watt amp, and this even bridged, these are somewhere around 100 watts. Actually into a 16 ohm load, probably still under 100 watt per channel here. So even though even though this is a little bit less power, it actually ends up sounding a little bit more effortless. So then that got me thinking. And one of the things that I thought was maybe I will get a pair of the smallest stereo Parasound Halo amps, which is, they're called the A23, A24. I think they're the A23 amplifiers, and they're these slim chassis stereo amplifiers that are less power, but you can bridge them. And so I was kind of looking around, waiting to see if something popped up used. It was kind of in the back of my mind. And then a couple of months ago, somebody who I know, a friend of mine who works at Sugden, who's worked at Sugden for many, many years. I have a great relationship with Sugden, the company, the amplifiers. I love the amplifiers. I owned a Sugden line stage from the Masterclass series for years. It was absolutely fantastic line stage preamp. And I have shown at hi-fi shows many times with Sugden gear. I love the A21 SE integrated amp, used that at a couple of shows. And I used my Sugden line stage and their matching phono stage with one of their stereo amplifiers. And one of the things that I noticed when reading the description of that particular, it was the Sapphire amplifier. It was the something FPB 800. I may be getting that wrong. But it was the amplifier in the Sugden Sapphire series, and I read in the description that it was a bridged design. So that's a little bit of background with me and Sugden. So when someone from the Sugden factory reached out to me a couple of months ago and said that Sugden would very much like to have a pair of 096 speakers in the factory, I thought, what an opportunity. Because I'm an audiophile, because I love hi-fi gear, and because I am constantly striving to get fantastic sound out of my system, and because I love the gear, I have made use of people in the industry, other manufacturers, wanting my speakers. I have quite often made use of that to my own ends, and so I have a number of pieces of equipment, fantastic pieces of equipment. Another amplifier I have, my Airtight 300R amplifier, was a barter, was a trade for a pair of 096s from with Airtight. Absolutely love that. My EMT preamp, likewise, some cartridges I have. More recently, a new tone arm that I'm going to mess around with and mount pretty soon. I haven't done it yet. So I talked to the person from Sugden, and she thought it would be a wonderful idea to do a barter. And I noticed that these big old monoblocks were largely a bridged version of the Masterclass stereo amplifier. The retail price of these is very, very similar to the retail price of a pair of 096s. And so I thought, let's make a deal. And so I did, and I am very excited. So, coming back to what's in these boxes. What's in these boxes is a pair of amplifiers made by a company that I love, that has a long and storied history and an excellent track record of making fantastic sounding stuff, some of which I have actually owned myself, and was not disappointed in the least. They are a bridged amplifier, and it is a high power. Not everyone would say 170 watts or so is high power, but I would say it's high power. And so, so many boxes are checked. So let's open these up and take a look, because I am curious. DHL, shipped by DHL. This is, these were opened at maybe at customs. The guy that dropped these off thought that it looked like these were opened in the England side of things. So opened before they ever left merry old England. Open indeed. It's the Russian nested dolls of packaging. To be fair, double boxing is awesome. I love double boxing. It is very effective. And expensive. As someone who designs and has to buy packaging for some stuff, it's an expensive way to go, but it is excellent. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It's cute. It's a little smaller maybe than I was expecting, but it's very cute. It's got very nice chunky proportions. All right, let's get serious about this. This way. Grab it. There's the power cord. I grab it like this. There we go. It comes out now. Maybe this comes out. Yes. All right. There it is. Oh, it looks lovely. Clearly, DHL or Customs was very interested in this amplifier as well. I got the anthracite. Is it the anthracite? Maybe it's just charcoal. Maybe I think I got charcoal finish. The silver is beautiful. Also, Sugden they will do the anodization on the front faceplate pretty much any color you want, which is fucking cool. How cool is that? I've seen some amazing ones. I've seen orange and blues. I've seen greens. Sugden Masterclass, made in England, Class A power amplifier. Ooh. Very nice, very clean. Can't wait to hook it up. And I love the hang tag on this. Look at this. Look at this beautiful little hang tag. J.E. Sugden MPA4, inspected. USA 120 volt, right. Caroline Williams. Mechanical, electric, bill. Final, bill. And the serial number. Thank you, Caroline and Bill. I'm very excited.